Hello, it's Dr. DeBord, and today we're going to talk about social psychology. This particular video may go a little longer than 15 minutes because there is quite a bit to say. Social psychology in general is a combination of psychology and sociology. So where sociology studies big groups of people, psychology studies the individual, as you know, because like earlier in the semester we were talking about the brain and the nervous system and all that. That's the one person. So social psychology brings in the one person and the group. And so how the group affects the person and how the person affects the group. So I'm using fingers as people. In this whole discipline, this area of psychology, it's huge. There are two big ways of thinking about things. One is social cognition, is how the real or imagined presence of other people affects how we behave. So, and our thinking about other people. So that's cognition piece. And then there's the social behavior, how the true real presence of others might affect whether we help someone else or we aggress towards someone else, all sorts of other behaviors that we engage in just because other people are around. There are some themes that weave throughout this whole area. One is called the cognitive miser theory. If you've never heard of the term miser, a miser is a person who tries to save money, pinch pennies. But this idea in social psychology is that all of us, me included, everybody, I've been teaching on this for a lot of years, that we all try to save mental energy. And we do that because it takes way too much energy to try to think about all the complex factors that might influence someone else's behavior. If we did that with everybody we interacted with, we'd be so busy in our heads trying to figure things out, we wouldn't get anything done. But the problem with it is we take shortcuts and we're wrong about our assumptions about other people. That's related to the next idea, which is the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error, it's a mouthful, says basically we have a basic or fundamental error in how we attribute or explain other people's behaviors. In the fundamental attribution error, basically the idea is that we see someone else doing something and we think they're doing that because that's their personality. That's who they are. And that's just not right a lot of the time. So, I mean, if you see someone, actually, if you've ever, interacted with someone who's crabby or who's you would probably walk away saying that you don't like that person. They're a nasty person. Probably something happened to that person earlier in the day, but we don't typically think about that. We attribute their behavior to their personality. One famous study on this topic was as a researcher brought in participants and told the participants, look, I hired a person to have a 10-minute conversation with you. They're going to have that conversation with you. And then the researcher said, I told this first person to act nasty, mean, and crabby towards you. And so they had a conversation and then it ended. The researcher then went and said, okay, now I paid that person to act that way towards you. What do you think their real personality is like? And over again, the participants in the study said that person was crabby. That person was nasty, not nice. It's like, wait, the researcher told you that he paid that person to act that way. And they did the same thing with, I paid this person to be nice. And people still said, nope, that's the real personality. Finally, a theme that goes throughout social psychology is the idea of the just world belief. And that is the notion good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. The problem with that, obviously, is it's not true. But we all tend to engage in this without realizing it, where you might be able to catch yourself. And like I said, I've been teaching on this for over 20 years. I catch myself. Typically, I'm cruising around, something bad happens to me, I get a flat tire or something goes wrong in whatever way. And I say, why me? Why did this bad thing happen to me? I'm trying to live right. I'm trying to be a good human being. Why would this bad thing happen to me? I was like, duh. I have to remind myself all the time. Bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And we're consistently walking around with this notion that as long as we're good, good things will happen. It just doesn't work that way. The world is unfair. And so just is justice. So the whole idea that there's justice in the world isn't accurate because bad things happen to good people. One ultimate consequence of this is that sometimes this leads to victim blaming. You see someone having a really hard time, you go like, I wonder what they did wrong. I wonder what they weren't working hard enough. What they do to deserve what's going on for them. That's obviously a bad outcome. All right, so I was 5 minutes on the first slide, so I'm gonna have to step it up a little bit. Another area, and you're gonna find that social psychology is like a collection of ideas. This is one, cognitive dissonance, and we have two sets of competing beliefs that we hold simultaneously, but they conflict with one another. What happens is that can create discomfort in ourselves, and dissonance is about discomfort. So I'm just gonna give you two examples, but I mean, you can look for this everywhere. When someone says one thing but acts in a different way, that's going to create dissonance for a person, and they will work hard to reduce that dissonance. One study, I'm just going to talk about the initiation study, or just initiation in everyday life. A lot of people join fraternities and sororities, and at HBCUs, actually, I think they're a good thing. But when it comes to being made a member, they have initiation. Sometimes there's hazing, and you wonder why hazing lasts for so long, even though it's been typically banned by campuses. The idea behind it is people, and it's not even conscious sometimes, people in the fraternity and sorority who are already members are asking the new people to pay a high price, embarrass themselves, or pay sometimes literally high price, money, dues. So when a person does that and then they're made a member, later on they're not going to turn around and quit. Because if they turn around and quit, they're going to say, wait a minute, I paid a really high price to be a member of this group, and now I'm going to turn around and quit? I don't value it? Wait, I said I valued it because I embarrassed myself or I paid these high dues. That would create too much dissonance. So people remain members because of this idea of like, wow, if you create this clash, a person is not going to behave in an inconsistent way if they can avoid it. Another area of social psychology, this is one of the most famous studies. I'm not going to talk much about it because of time factors, and there is an entire video I've posted on Canvas about this. It's a very famous study, and basically the idea is like you take random people and randomly assign them to one of two groups and watch how the demands of a role or script affect their behavior. It's dramatic, and it's true for all of us. I mean, I take the role of professor, and sometimes I'm surprised at how much it affects my behavior. Sometimes I take the role of counselor as a therapist, and that dramatically affects my behavior. The roles that we take socially will dictate our behaviors, some ways in like surprising ways, actually. So watch that video. It's on Canvas. Just click prison study. There's two major studies of conformity I want to talk about. Conformity can be either we conform to each other because we don't know what's going on and we're trying to figure it out, and so we'll look to other people for information. This happens a lot when we're, if you ever walk into a class late when we're in person and the class is already engaged in some activity, you're probably not going to bother the teacher. You're going to just go and look and ask, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And you look to each other for information. You ask classmates. That's informational influence. But there's also normative influence, which means that's when we conform because we don't want to be rejected by a group that we value. So we may even do something that's kind of stupid or something that's kind of like not really consistent with our values. But because other people are doing it, it's like, oh, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be cast out from this group. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Most times when I ask students to write about this anonymously, they talk about experiences with alcohol or drugs or something else. But it happens in all sorts of ways, even in the clothes we wear, everything. I mean, conformity is not all such a bad thing. I mean, I'm glad people conform when they're driving their cars and they drive on the right-hand side of the road, because I don't want to randomly smash into someone and drive on the wrong side of the road. So conformity is not all bad. One big study was done on conformity. You may have heard of this. I have another video called the Ash study. Solomon Ash was a researcher on conformity, and he did this famous study where he brought a person into his lab, sat him down at a table with like 6 other people, and the true participant had no idea that the other people were being paid by Solomon Ash. And he would show them slides like this and say, okay, which line on the right is most similar in size to the one on the left? And the true participant was always the last person to say out loud what it was. But Ash had paid these people for the first 2 rounds to say, oh, it's B, it's B, it's B. And so when it came to the true participant, they said B. Second round, same kind of thing. Third round, when this came up, they said, okay, let's like just show a brand new set. Which line on the right is most similar to the line on the left? And persons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 said line A. Now, if it's your turn, are you going to say line A, or you're going to say, no, that's line B? Watch that video, because that video shows what happened in a more recent version. So you had 6 fake participants, 1 real participant. What happened was 37% of the time, people conformed. 3/4 of people conformed at least 1 time. So that is just how powerful conformity can be. Yeah, watch that video too, because it's powerful. One thing, two factors affected conformity. If one other person disagreed with the rest of the group when it came to the true participant, they didn't conform much at all, only about 10% of the time. So all it takes sometimes is one person going against a group, and that will lead to just the dismantling or just falling apart of conformity. Also, when the true participants were asked to give their responses privately, write them down, not say it out loud, you didn't get much conformity there either. The last study I want to talk about in this video is a very famous demonstration in some ways. Stanley Milgram was a famous researcher. I also posted this video on Canvas. Please watch it. He was a Jewish psychologist from Germany. He fled Germany to get away from the Nazis. And he wonders, like, could the kind of conformity that happened in Nazi Germany happen in the US when he did this study, and I believe it was in the 50s when he originally did this. And obviously, yeah, it can. But they had after World War II trials for Nazi soldiers who just killed a lot of Jewish people. And when they put them on trial and they said, why'd you do that? The most common response was, I was just following orders. So Milgram wanted to study obedience, which is a special kind of conformity. It is conforming to the demands of an authority figure. And so in this situation, what he did, he advertised that he was doing a study and that people would get paid to do a memory or learning task. And so the person showed up at the lab, and there was already another person there who Milgram said, this is another participant, and I'm going to randomly assign you. One of you is going to be teacher, one of you is going to be the learner. What the true participant did not know was that that other person was being paid by Milgram to actually be the learner, and that you, as the participant, were going to get the role of teacher. He took the other person, I actually took both people into another room and said, the learner, here, we're going to strap you down to this table and attach you to shock devices and give you the option, but you can still reach these 4 little buttons, A, B, C, and D. And when you get asked a question, you respond A, B, or C, which is the correct answer, A, B, C, or D. And it was kind of like a game, like, I don't know if you remember in Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. And so the teacher who's taken to the other room and speaking through a microphone to that person who's strapped down says, here are some words, which one's not like the other? And the participant's supposed to press A, B, C, or D. Well, they end up getting a lot wrong. And what Milgram, as the authority figure in this study, did was told people, you have to use this shock device, and this is what the shock device looked like, and start with 15 volts. And if they get one wrong, start with 15 and give them a shock. And if they get the next one wrong, give them 30, then 45, then 60, then 75, and then 90, all the way up to 450 volts. Now, to be sure that the true participant understood what a shock was, they gave him a little test shock on their arm of 75 volts. If you've ever been shocked by an appliance, you know, the shocks hurt. So they had a little idea like what they were inflicting on that other person. The question Milgram had was, how many people would go all the way to 450 volts? He asked people in the community, he asked psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, psychiatric nurses, all sorts of people. And most people said, oh, you're not going to get people going all the way to 450 volts. That's would only be the most mean and sadistic and cruel people ever. And here's what he found, actually 65%. And I'll ask you that Friday. What percent of people went all the way to 450 volts? 2/3. 65%. A lot of people. And it was just rather shocking to use a phrase. And it's scary. The idea is that just because Milgram would sit there and say, I'm sorry, this experiment requires you to continue. You have to keep providing shocks until this is over. He didn't have a gun to a person's head. He didn't have any way to physically coerce people. He just said, you must continue, you must continue. And so 2/3 of people, and he did this first with men, then he did it with women, got the same results. He did all sorts of variations on this. And if you watch the video, you're going to find that the person in the other room who could be heard is screaming bloody murder, like, this hurts, let me out here, let me out here, let me out here. And Milgram is just sitting there telling the teacher, you got to continue delivering shocks every time he gets one wrong. And again, people did. It's a frightening study, honestly. If you look at the variations that he did, when he moved it from the famous university setting that was prestigious to like a strip mall, he got less obedience then. Only half the people went to 450 volts. But when he set it up so that there were 2 other teachers and 2 other learners, if the 2 other teachers that had been paid by Milgram said, no, I'm not going to do this, this is wrong, then basically you had obedience drop to 10%. I had one more picture, but I don't. The one picture that's really frightening is the one here where the teacher touches the learner. And actually you had the teacher grab the other person's hand that was wrapped in kind of this insulating material and shove it onto a shock plate. Now the person was an actor. Oh, this is important. The other person was not really getting shocked. They were acting. So that when you watch that video, keep in mind, nobody got shocked except the true participant who got a taste of what 75 volts was like. But the other person is acting like they're getting a full 450 volts. After a while, the actor goes silent. And it seems like that the teacher may have killed the other person. And still you get 65% of people going all the way to the end. It's a powerful demonstration on how obedience can still affect people today. It just recently, I think it was like 5 or 10 years ago, they redid this study in Britain, and they had the same number of people go all the way to 450 volts. All right, so this video was a little longer than the 15 minutes I'm normally doing. Hopefully this helps explain some of the things that you'll be introduced to in the chapter and also in watching those videos that I posted and in the study guide. Take care.